Hello everybody, this is Mr. Storm, and today we're going to talk about the difference between a raster image and a vector image. Raster graphics are what you're used to. You've been dealing with raster graphics already. And essentially what raster graphics are they're images that are built using pixels. Almost every photograph you've ever seen is built using pixels. Every image you've seen on the internet, they're all built using pixels. And what that means is that this image is made up of tiny little individual dots that all have one color. So every single pixel is exactly one color. And if we zoom in close enough, you can start to see that there's some fuzziness around the edge. There's some pixelization. There's some things that kind of make the image less sharp because all of these pixels are squares, and the closer we zoom in on the picture, the bigger those squares become, which makes the image just a little bit grosser, right? Grosser is a good term. Now that's to save file space because all we have to do is the only thing we have to store is color information for these pixels. Now the more pixels you have on a picture, obviously the bigger the file is going to be, but the clearer the file is going to be. This is a high resolution image, but as you can see, even when I zoom in, it becomes a little bit pixelated. If we look here, this is what I'm talking about. Every square itself is one specific color, right? And those colors, those colored squares make up the image. When you put them together, they make up the image. Now, what about if we didn't use squares to represent the shapes and the colors that we wanted to have on the screen? What we could do is we can create something called a vector image. Now, vector images don't use pixel information to create the image. Vector images use mathematics. They take the line data and color data, and they use mathematical algorithms to resize the picture and keep it perfectly clear every time we resize it, and keep the color information and the line information exactly the same. So what that means is that we can zoom in super far on a vector image and we'll never, ever get pixelation. So we can blow it up as big as we want. There's all kinds of things we can do with it. It's a really great tool to use, but the file size is much bigger because we have to store all the math data instead of, just color data for each individual pixel. Here's another image that kind of highlights what I'm talking about. So with a raster image, when you zoom in, you get the pixelation around the edges. With a vector, you don't get any pixelation whatsoever, right? Now, this is a raster image itself, so of course we're going to see some pixelation just because it's a raster image, but you get the idea. With a vector image, it's really, really sharp. With a raster image, it's pixelated. Now, that doesn't mean raster images are terrible and we should never use them. Obviously, they have their use. Raster images are really important for just sharing pictures that you don't really care how big they are. Web images, images you put on the internet, for the most part, you can have them as raster images because when you're looking at them on a screen, they're totally fine at the size they're. You can represent them in a size that makes them clear. You don't have to blow them up super big. But let's say you wanted to make a banner for a business, and you wanted to put your business's logo on that banner, and the banner was going to be 6 feet tall by 12 feet wide. Well, your really tiny logo, raster image, when you blow that up, it's going to be gross looking at that size, and you're probably not going to be able to see what it is clearly. That's why a vector image is really important, because when you draw that logo as a vector, you can blow it up as big as you want. So let's draw a vector image. So I have this browser open, or this website open in my browser. It's called Vecter, V-E-T or V-E-C-T-R, vecter.com. And this is a very easy to use vector image or vector editing software. We can download it if we wanted, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to click Use Online because the browser, the browser tool is pretty easy to use. So it'll open up my workspace here, and it says it's a temporary file. I have to sign up or log in to save my files, to save my work, to come back and work on them more. But I'm not going to worry about saving it right now because we're just going to make something fun. So really quickly, over here we have pages. I can add different pages. I can add more pages to this document. I have layers, so as I start drawing, I'm going to have layers, just like we have with our raster editing software. We can use layers in our vector editing software as well. I have some shapes that I can use, that I can draw and put in there. I have this pen tool, which we're going to have a whole lesson on because it's really important to learn how to use it correctly. I have the pencil tool, I have a text tool, and I can upload images from my computer. I can also find more shapes, bring in more shapes. But I am just going to, I'm going to make a simple logo. I'm going to grab this right here, and I'm just going to draw it out. Okay, I'm going to make it really big. Now, at this point, I can make all kinds of changes to it. Over here, I have options. I can change the color of the image. I can make it green, a nice dark green. Okay. I can change the border of the image, make the border a nice thick black, and I can change the thickness of the border. I can change whether it's an inside border, center border, or outside border. I'm just going to keep it center. I can add a shadow to my image. Let's see. Not really seeing the shadow, but that's because there's nothing really behind it. But anyway, I can add an inset shadow to make it look like it pops out a little bit 3D like that, if you can kind of tell around the edges. There's all kinds of things I can do with this. But the important part, the thing that I wanted to show you, was that, so now we've drawn this thing, this little gear shape. Let me deselect it so we don't, okay. If we look here, I'm going to zoom in on it as far as I can. Actually, I'm going to get rid of that stroke. I'm going to get rid of the border. I'm going to zoom in on it as far as I possibly can. Okay. And I'm also going to get rid of the shadow so it's a little bit clear what we're doing. Drop that. Actually, turn off the shadow and turn off the inset. Okay, look at this edge right here, right? Now, we can definitely tell as we zoom in, we're zoomed in 12,800%. And there's no pixelation. Oh, yeah, see, I went too far. Oh, there it is. There's no pixelation whatsoever. There's no pixelation at all on this line, which means I can blow this up as big as I want, and I'm never going to lose image quality. It simply just redraws the image every time we change its size. Perfect. So there are all kinds of cool things I can do with this. So I have a shape on here. Let's add some text on top, right? So I can draw this out, and I can type whatever I want. Mr. Storm is awesome. And I can take that text, highlight it, and now I have other options for text, right? I can change the text size, make it bigger. I want to make it way bigger. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Okay, that's good. I can change the font. I can change the line height, the orientation, change the background, or change the color of the text here. Right? I can give it a border so that it's easy to read against my background, right? By the way, black text with a white border or white text with a black border will be readable on any background ever. Always be readable. Shadow, I can make it or I can change the opacity. so that it's a little bit see-through, but just like that. Okay. So there's all kinds of cool stuff we could do. We could add, regular shapes. We can use the pen tool, which again we're going to talk about in another lesson, but we can use the pen tool to make custom shapes however we want. Just like that. So anyway, I want you to just play around in Vector. I'm going to teach you a little bit more. I'm going to teach you a more complex vector editing program next time. It has more options and more things that we can do. But for right now, just play around with vector editing software. Play around with Vecter.com. Make some things. Make a logo. Draw a little bit. Use the pen tool to do some drawings, doodle, whatever you want. And when you're done, I want you to export your image. Now, there are two different ways we can export it, right? We can export it as an SVG or as a PNG. SVG is the saved file. It's the file that we can use to come back in here and continue editing. Or we can export it as a PNG or JPEG, right? Now, PNGs, JPEGs, these are raster images, but that's okay. So we edited, we did what we wanted. I want you to save it as a PNG and then upload it to Google Classroom so I can see what you've done. I can see all the things you've done to play around with this thing. But spend some time thinking about the difference between raster and vector. Think about how you would use a vector over using a raster image. We're going to spend some time doing some illustrations and making some vector images in the coming days, coming weeks in this class. All right, thanks for paying attention, and I will see you next time. Bye.